When the trailers for Sonic Origins first dropped, there was one feature of the game that instantly grabbed my attention, and I knew it would have to be the very first thing I tried the instant I bought the game. And as you might have guessed, that feature was Sonic Free Widescreen! Ah yeah, I'd been waiting 10 years for this thing, and I couldn't hold out a second more. And what a great remaster it was. So many amazing quality of life improvements, while still keeping absolutely everything you loved about the original game. But after I played that, I didn't really care about the other games in the collection, since we've had widescreen versions of them for years now. So I just spent the rest of my time with the game playing the mission mode, and I had a pretty fun time with it, appreciating how each mission tried to put a fresh new spin on decades old gameplay, and to commemorate, why did they pick such a hard word? And to commemorate my time with the missions, I've decided to rank all 71 of them based on how much I enjoyed them. Wait, 71? That's an odd total. And wait, there's only 60 missions in the base game. What gives? Well, I'll tell you. In order to squeeze as much money out of their customers as possible, Sega siphoned off some of the missions into the Digital Deluxe package. Or if you bought the standard non-deluxe game, you could buy them as part of the Premium Fun Pack instead, which is what I had to do when I decided to make this video. You can make those £3 extra I spent worth it by leaving a like. These extra missions were given the Extreme moniker because they're all significantly harder versions of missions that are present in the base game, which, considering how a majority of the missions are ridiculously easy, it feels like a bit of an insult to make you pay additional money just to get missions that are decently challenging. This package gives each of the 3 playable characters one additional mission for each of the 4 games. Now, you'd think that would mean there are 12 additional missions, but no. Because Sega loves to unload work on Sonic's modding community, they did not bother to make Knuckles playable in CD, which means no Knuckles missions for CD, which means only 2 extreme missions were added to CD, which means there are only 11 extreme missions total, which makes our total of 71. Alright, that's enough preamble. Let's rank these missions! But how should I rank them? I know, I'll rate them out of 5 stars, that's perfect! And look, each mission already comes pre-ranked, so I don't even have to do anything! Oh wait, these missions are to indicate how hard each mission is, not how good they are. I guess I'll have to think of another way to rank them. I know, I'll give them a letter grade, like in a traditional tier list! Oh wait, the missions are already given letter grades depending on how well you perform in them. Wow, this person did really amazing. They got an S rank in every mission. They must be a super cool pro gamer. Oh, wait. Silly me. This is my save file. How embarrassing. By the way, I'm available. You know what? I'm still going to do this tier list style with the letter grades, but I'll also give a number placement for each of the missions from 71st to 1st, so you will know the exact order that I'm going to rank them in. Okay, am I done now? Can I get on with the tier list? Oh wait, one more thing. When I discuss the missions, I'll often refer to what you have to do in order to get an S rank, since I imagine that's what most people would be aiming for. So if I talk about a time limit even though a mission doesn't actually have one, I'm usually referring to the time limit in order to get an S rank. Okay, now I can get on with the tier list. Starting off with a rank so bad, it's not even possible to achieve it in the game itself. D tier. When compiling this list, I came to the realization that most of these missions are pretty decent. Some are less interesting or more frustrating than others, but I wasn't sure if I considered any of them to be outright bad. This obviously made it more difficult to determine which one I considered the absolute worst. But ultimately, I knew there was only one mission that could justify that placement. Ring Challenge 100. Now, you might be thinking that's a weird choice for the bottom of this list. You might have played it and had a perfectly fine time with it. And to be honest, I think the actual mission of collecting the rings is fine. No, the fault of the mission doesn't lie in the level design. It lies in the mission description. The description reads, "Don't miss a ring, get 100 of them in a row." The first time I read this, I thought, oh, if it's telling me not to miss a ring, then it must mean I have to get literally all of the rings, right? So for my first few attempts, that's what I would try to do. And I failed over and over again. The stage is non-linear, so I had no clue what the correct pathing was to get all the rings. I kept being shot along paths, not sure if that was the right direction, and I had to keep backtracking when I skipped a ring. And I would start over when I got hit because I assumed I just had to do that. So after I failed at this a few times, I was like, okay, let's just try collecting rings without backtracking if I miss any, and see what happens. And of course, when I did that, I beat the mission easily, because there are more than 100 rings in the level. So then why does the description specifically say, don't miss a ring, when it's completely fine to do that? Seriously, I don't think any other mission description is as misleading as this one. It's really weighing down what would otherwise be a perfectly fine mission. But it's okay, I've had my rant now, and I'm sure there won't be another mission so annoying that it makes me go on a whole other rant. Right? Number 70. Fast Foes. A mission where all of the enemies are super sped up. Unfortunately, I don't think making the enemies faster really does much to change up the gameplay. Kinda just feels like I'm playing through a regular stage. And that's all I had to say about that. Oh, wait, I actually didn't go on another rant. That's great! Funny number. Twinkle Toes. Oh, here's the mission where I go on another long rant. Okay, so this might just be a me problem, but for a 1-star mission, Twinkle Toes seems strangely difficult. I got crushed by these barrels so many times because I could never judge if there was enough room to walk between them. It usually looked like there'd be enough room to just slip through, but I'd get crushed by the very corner of the barrel. Replaying it though, I did realise that just jumping between the barrels is much easier than walking between them. This mission can feel kind of slow and tedious as well, since you have to wait around for the barrels to line up before you can make your move. This is mainly just a problem for the first half of the mission though. In the second half, the cycles are lined up more, so you can just run through without having to wait. Falling off is also pretty punishing, as it leads you to having to redo a massive chunk of the level. But ultimately my main beef with this mission, and why it ranks so low, is that I just don't think it should have been designated as a 1-star mission. It's difficult enough to justify at least 2 stars, or maybe even 3. Trust me, there are other missions down the line that are given higher star ratings despite being much easier than this one. C tier, for missions that are functional but I don't find that interesting. Number 68, Mercy Sonic 1. So firstly, there are actually 4 Mercy missions, 1 for each game. For some reason they decided to give all 4 of them the exact same name, which I don't really understand. Like, there are also 2 Twinkle Toes missions, and the second one is called Twinkle Toes 2, so why didn't they do the same thing for the Mercy missions? Mercy is a mission where you have to make it to the end of the course without touching an enemy, so obviously you can't destroy any of them. But this also means that just touching them is an instant death, even when you have rings. While I think the concept of this mission is fun, in the Sonic 1 version it's incredibly easy to avoid the enemies, since they all either stand in place or move really slowly, which makes the mission kinda boring. Now you might argue, well that's fine, it's the first of 4 Mercy missions. It should be easier than the others. Which I would agree with if it wasn't for the fact that it was given a 3-star difficulty rating. Seriously, how could this possibly warrant 3 stars when Twinkle Toes only gets 1? After looking at all 4 Mercy missions, I realised that this was done because all of them were given the exact same difficulty rating. So even though all of the Mercy missions were meant to be roughly as difficult as each other, the first one just doesn't match up to the others, leaving it as a bit of a disappointment. 67. Stinger Swarm. There were quite a few of these enemy swarm missions, and also some time battle missions which are essentially the same thing, and the way they set themselves apart is by varying in difficulty. Stinger Swarm is a 1-star mission, and there's already another 1-star swarm mission which I think is better, which is why I'm ranking this one so low. 66. Timed Battle Batbots. Again, there are a lot of these timed battle and enemy swarm missions, and they have to do something to make them stand out for me to care about them, which this one does not. I guess since you have to kill all 10 Batbots, it does at least make it a little more challenging than the swarm missions, where there's always more enemies than you're actually required to kill. So that's why this one is slightly higher than Stinger Swarm. 65. Eggman Spike Attack. The first Eggman mission to appear on this tier list, which obviously means I think it's one of the weakest. Firstly, why doesn't the boss fight music play in this mission? It's really distracting. Secondly, I couldn't even tell what the difference was between this mission and the original version of this fight. After looking it up, apparently the posts with spikes are closer together, which, to be fair, does make it more challenging. Although personally I still think this mission feels too similar to the original fight to justify its existence. I will also praise that the timer stops as soon as you defeat Eggman. As I will discuss later, this is not something that's true for all of the Eggman missions. 64. Take to the air. A mission based around Tails' flight sounds like a fun concept, but this is actually really boring. Just slowly meandering through the air till you get enough rings. Great. 63, a swingin' good time. If I was ranking these missions based on names alone, this would probably be in the top 5. But the mission itself is just okay. In it, you have to ride swinging platforms to the end of the level. The first set of swinging platforms are positioned so you can't get hit by the choppers below. But for the rest, you will have to jump to either avoid or destroy them. While I do like me some swinging platforms. This mission just feels kind of boring and honestly a little uninspired. 62, Sandy Swim. Sandy Swim is a mission where you have to jump up sand streams to collect rings as you make your way to the finish. And it's very simple to do that, because this is a 1-star mission. I'm sorry, it's hard to get hyped about the 1-star missions. They're intentionally easy, so there just isn't that much to say about them. 61, Seesaw Jump. I love playing on a seesaw as much as any grown man, but this mission is a little boring. A lot of waiting around for the little ball thingy to come back down, and if you miss it, that means even more waiting around. Hey! Mum said it was my turn on the seesaw. 60, Time Travel 101. Use the time travel post to travel to the past, or future, and back again. It's pretty cool that there are multiple ways to take on this mission, depending on if you decide to travel to the past or future first. It's easier to travel to the future first, since you see the future sign as soon as you enter the level, and you can time travel if you just keep running forward. But there is also a benefit to skipping the future sign and travelling to the past instead. Since in the past, there are these 2 springs opposite each other, that you can easily use to travel back to the future again. As to why I rank this mission so low, it's just because I've never liked the way the time travel mechanic works that much. I just find it so finicky to activate, with it being so easy for you to run into a wall or something, stopping you in your tracks and making you lose your time travel juice. 59, Ring Rush. A nice, simple mission where you just need to run to the goal and collect rings. Thanks to the constantly provided invincibility, you're unlikely to come across any harm, and there are ample rings, so it's not a struggle to collect 100. The one thing that might make you mess up is not boarding the rising platforms in time, leaving you to wait for them. But even that's not too big an issue. It happened to me and I still passed with an S rank. 58, Gotta Go Fast. Gotta go fast. Gotta go fast. Gotta go faster, 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 faster. 58, Gotta Go Fast. Okay, so I like the idea of this mission. Making everything fast is a natural idea for a Sonic game, but this is just not a particularly difficult mission. For one ranked with 5 stars, you're provided with enough rings, so getting hit isn't a problem, and you can get through it so fast that it's not a big deal to get the S rank either. I guess being bounced around is a little obnoxious, but if you're always bouncing toward the goal, it doesn't really matter. Luckily, they kind of redeemed this concept by making an extreme version of it. Although that does draw attention to how ridiculous it was to give the original mission 5 stars. B tier! For missions that I think are good, but not great. 57, Extreme Aerial Attack. In Aerial Attack, you have to use Knuckles' glide to destroy badniks, and in Extreme Aerial Attack, you have to use Knuckles' glide to destroy badniks, but in more extreme circumstances. Okay, so giving a mission a low rating just because it's difficult is obviously pretty petty, and as you will see, a lot of the more difficult missions are actually higher up because I appreciate their difficulty. But man, I just find this one so annoying because of how finicky it is. I think the best example I can give of this finickiness is when you climb down this wall here to the blocks below it. Because of the way they're set up, you'd think Knuckles could just climb straight down the wall to the blocks, as if they were one surface. But you actually can't, because as soon as you reach the bottom of the wall, you will automatically drop off. I find this irritating because 1, I don't think it's clearly indicated to the player that Knuckles will always drop off here. You could argue that the blocks being a separate object should be enough of an indicator that you'd fall off. But why would it be? If it looks like you can climb straight from one object to another, why would I think otherwise? And 2, it makes trying to line up Knuckles to glide back through the cave so irritating, and he drops off every time you try to switch him between the wall and the blocks. Gliding back and forth between these narrow passages isn't that fun either, and if you're not positioned correctly you'll just glide into a wall and have to reset your glide. On top of all this, The caterpillars won't count towards your total if you glide into them from the back, even though this does still destroy them, so you just don't get another chance. I don't know, maybe I'm just complaining because I'm bad at it, but I'm still too annoyed by this mission to rank it that highly. 56. Mercy. Sonic 2. Another Mercy mission! And I know I made it sound like that the first Mercy mission was the only one I didn't like, but honestly I don't care for this one much either. I do like the twist at the end, where you should spin dash under the last two enemies instead of jumping over them. 55. Small Stuff. The most notable thing about Small Stuff is that you get to play as Baby, and it lasts surprisingly long for a 1-star mission. But other than that, it's difficult for me to think of something that makes this mission stand out against just regular gameplay. I guess the part where you have to wait in the holes for the robots to pass? I don't know. 54. Zero Ring Challenge. Make it to the end of the mission without getting hit. If you take the bottom path, this mission isn't that challenging. The obstacle most likely to catch you out is the twirling spike. Really, just be aware of your surroundings and you should be fine. The upper path though is a little more cutthroat. The first few times I tried to take the spring up there, it just catapulted me straight into the buzz bomber, and if you do make it to the upper path, it's just much more time consuming and full of traps to kill you. So I'd only recommend going up there if you felt like giving yourself an extra challenge. 53. Reverse Time Traveler Deluxe. A more complicated version of the Time Travel 101 mission, and it has a lot of the same praises I would give that mission. There are multiple ways to approach it, depending on if you travel to the past or future first, and which part of the stage you use to travel. The easiest place to time travel is where these two springs are. Of course that means I also have the same issues with this one too, such as me not liking how finicky it can be to time travel, with it obviously being more pronounced on this stage since there's more stuff to get caught on. It's also pretty easy to exploit the time travel mechanic using the drop dash, which can result in you getting stuck in a wall. In fact, I think it might even be possible to get stuck in the wall without using the drop dash. If this happened during a regular CD stage, I'd be more understanding. The original game obviously wasn't designed with the drop dash in mind, so it's not like the level design can account for it. But in a mission that was designed in the full knowledge that the drop dash would be in the game, a little less understandable. Also, I'm deducting a point for the glaring 1 times error in the mission description. Grammatical errors, not even 1 times. 52. Conveyor Belt Challenge. In Conveyor Belt Challenge, you ride the conveyor belt as you collect rings. The description says dodge the spikes, although the flies are the real pests here. Some of the conveyors will go the opposite way that you want to go, so you have to keep jumping along them to get through the level. But other than that, there just isn't really that much to report. Sorry. 51. Knuckles Climbing Challenge. A straightforward test of Knuckles' climbing abilities. I love how the badniks will pathetically fire those slow-ass missiles at you. Oh god. Oh my god, they're closing in on me. Oh no. No! No! I do like that it's a mission based around Knuckles climbing though. If only it were a little more extreme. 50. Caterpillar Swarm. Caterpillar Swarm is the very first mission in the game, and it's a cute touch that the first mission was set in Sonic 1's Final Zone. For this mission, you have to kill 5 caterpillars before reaching the goal, and with the ample number of them and the short length of the stage, you'll probably be getting an S rank the first time through. They obviously wanted you to start off easy though. There aren't even any bottomless pits to fall in. The only way you could realistically screw up is if you head straight to the goal post before killing enough caterpillars. Once you're in sight of the post, you are not allowed to backtrack, and will be forced to restart the mission if you want to complete it. As simple as this mission seems, there is still some complexity to its design, with you being able to take diverging paths. Stick to the upper path and you'll find 6 caterpillars, so you can still finish with 1 to spare. If you do happen to fall below though, you'll find 4 extra caterpillars, so you could just kill those ones instead and skip over the rest as you head to the goal. This little bit of depth is why I'm ranking this somewhat mundane mission higher than I would otherwise. But given the sheer number of Destroy the Badnik missions, Caterpillar Swarm's low difficulty is holding it back from standing out much more. Yeah, it's probably a little strange that I had a decent amount to say about this mission, considering how dismissive I was of Stinger Swarm. Really, it's just because I played this mission first, and any point of praise I could have given to Stinger Swarm, I had already said about this mission. 49. Bullet Hail. Alright, before discussing this mission I should probably give the disclaimer that I have never been a fan of Sky Chase Zone. I've always thought it was a pretty boring stage with no way to speed up how long it takes to complete, and there's no checkpoints, so if you accidentally die, you have to do the whole slow ass level again. So Bullet Hail is already fighting an uphill battle to gain my affection. But, in Bullet Hail's favour, it is much shorter than the standard level, so I don't get as irritated by it. It even helps me appreciate how chill the music is. It's just going for the S rank that's annoying. If you get hit, you have to restart the level, which wouldn't be so bad if the enemies weren't able to hit you before they're even on screen. Also, when you're trying to collect all the rings at the end, you just get pulled forward before you're even done. Like, excuse me, can you not see that I'm still scrambling for rings here? And that has cheated me out of an S rank before. But I do have to appreciate how they worked around saying hell. They came damn close to swearing in a Sonic game. 48. Tornado Flyby. The second Sky Chase mission and all my points about Bullet Hell apply to this one too, so I won't repeat myself. I like the addition of the star guys though. I always forget you can jump on them before they explode. I thought they were just always invincible. Also, originally I was planning on looking up every badnik's name so I could look like a true Sonic nerd, but I actually think it's funnier if I don't bother using their real names. I'm ranking this mission higher than Bullet Hell because it's more challenging than the first one, so I respect it a little more. Wait, does that make sense? I said I disliked the first one because I didn't like having to restart, which I have to do even more here, so... whatever, it's fine. 47. Mercy. Free. So normally in these Mercy missions, touching the enemy in any way just insta-kills you, but interestingly, touching the frog's arms in this one doesn't count as touching them. This makes this mission a little easier because it means you can just damage boost through these sections. The bird enemies will try flying into you, but they're always too far away from you for that to really matter, and the frogs just stay in place, so they're fine. 46. Horny Challenge. Horny Challenge? Avoid getting squashed as you make your way to the goal. I alluded to this earlier when I was talking about Twinkle Toes, but I've never been a big fan of things crushing you in Sonic games. I've always just found it difficult to judge if a gap is big enough to slip under or if I'm going to get crushed. But, while I'm not the biggest fan of the mechanic, I do at least appreciate any mission that challenges you. Except that one. The squashing pillars are obviously the biggest threat here since they can insta-kill you, whilst you can damage boost through the lava and swinging spikes, although the spikes can be a problem when they knock you back into the pillars. If you want to finish with an S rank, you will need the confidence to not just wait around and run past the obstacles. 45. Eggman Sped Up. One of the easiest Eggman fights suddenly becomes one of the hardest. I'll admit this is the one mission where I looked up someone else's playthrough just so I could see how to do it myself. Really, this one just requires patience. Wait until Eggman does his little stompy tantrum before you attack, then just keep bouncing. Also, thank God this is another Eggman fight where the timer stops right as you defeat him. I know I already said I would discuss the timer thing later, but you're gonna have to be patient a bit longer because we haven't quite got there yet. 44. Pinball Pro. In Pinball Pro, you use the pinball bumpers to get a score of 5,000 before reaching the goal. Honestly, I'm surprised this is the only mission based around getting a high score. I think that's an aspect of classic Sonic that kind of feels forgotten about. Like, no one really cares what their score is by the end of the game. The mission is a little tricky. You have to make sure you're racking up enough points to the pinball table, while still leaving yourself enough time to make your own way to the goal. If you bounce around too much, it could cost you that S rank. This mission does get a little repetitive though. You just gotta keep hitting Sonic into whatever those white things are. A- tier. Yep, we have over 40 missions left and we're already in the A tier, which is why I had to separate it into two sub-tiers, A- and A+. What's the difference between them, you ask? Well, obviously A- isn't quite as good as A+. 43. Slippery Swim. I always appreciate when a mission is built around a mechanic unique to a specific game. In this case, swimming in the oil from Oil Ocean. And it's pretty satisfying to actually avoid the oil as much as possible by bouncing on all the enemies' heads in a row. Oh look, they even put rings above where they are so you can find them easier. You're also given the choice of going along this upper route or going down through the oil, and it's always better to just take the upper route. The lower route does give you more enemies, but you can still get enough of them without taking it, and you can finish the level faster. 42. Quick Step. Despite being called Quick Step, this level does require a little patience. You have to wait for the platforms to appear, and if you miss them, it can really set you back. The ending with the panels breaking away is a pretty epic sequence too. 41. Blue Beam. Another challenging Eggman boss mission. Jumping into Eggman can cause you to bounce back into his blue beam. or fall through the floor, so it's pretty easy to insta-death. But it is possible to exploit this mission if you can get Eggman stuck in place at the edge of the screen. Just make sure you don't fall into the water after you're done. Also, finally I can talk about the timer thing. So as mentioned before, in the CD and Sonic 3 versions of this mission, the timer stops as soon as you defeat Eggman, but in this one the timer doesn't stop until you hit the signpost. So you have to be wary of that when going for the S rank. It's just so weird to me that it works one way for 2 of the missions and another way for the other 2. Is this just how it worked in their respective games? I didn't pay enough attention to them to notice, and I don't care enough to look it up. 40, Bounce House. This is another one of the 1-star missions I actually kind of struggle with. It's definitely not that hard, but man do I find it tricky to aim Sonic on those bouncy things. I actually kind of like that there's a 1-star mission that challenges me, which is a little hypocritical considering I criticised the Twinkle Toes one for it. I guess the difference there is that you can't actually die in the Bounce House mission, and it's very short. Plus, bouncing on those bouncy things is kinda fun! God, do you ever play a Sonic game and realise you have no idea what any of the objects are supposed to be called? 39, True Trajectory! Okay, so I may have compromised my list slightly just to make sure the 2 bouncy missions were right next to each other. In True Trajectory? In True Trajectory, I can't pronounce it anymore. In True Trajectory, you have to use the bouncing floors to collect 50 rings and then make your way to the signpost. Although the mission description doesn't mention the signpost part. To be honest, I don't get why these collect the thing type missions make you go to the goalpost after, instead of just finishing as soon as you've collected the things. There aren't any hazards in this one, so you can't even lose the rings before you hit the goal. Anyway, pretty simple mission, but bouncing around the floors is super fun. 38, Water Shield Challenge. Wait, this thing is called the Water Shield? I always called it the Bubble Shield. Anyway, this is the last of the Elemental Shield missions, so it's kind of ironic that it's the first on our list. In this underwater mission, there are no air pockets, so you have to keep the water shield in order to breathe. You also need it for Sonic's bouncing power, so he can traverse the level. Hey, that means it's the 3rd bouncing mission in a row. Now that was accidental. I like that in this one you can lose the water shield toward the end of the challenge, but can still pass the mission if you get to the end before you run out of air. Unlike the other elemental shield challenges where you're expected to have a shield at pretty much all times. 37, Ring Challenge 50. In this mission, you have to collect 50 rings in Labyrinth Zone. Okay, so I might be thinking too deeply about this, but is the 50 ring challenge being set in Labyrinth Zone some kind of oblique reference to the Sonic 1 patch, where they added 1 extra ring to a shortcut you could take in Labyrinth Act 1, so you could still collect 50 rings on that route to access the special stage at the end? You know, I think I've been watching too much Cyber Shell. Back to the mission itself, while it is relatively simple, I appreciate that there are a few things the player has to juggle with, including not getting hit and keeping up your air supply. It's also cool that you can actually complete the mission without taking a single breath, if you're fast enough. Still overall a pretty easy mission though, with the one obstacle that has a real chance of screwing you over being that twirling spike ball. Hey, that's just like in the Zero Ring Challenge. 36, Sonic's Spin Dash Attack. For this mission, you have to spin dash into 10 ladybugs as you make your way toward the goal. It's kinda funny that they put the Spin Dash challenge as a Sonic 1 mission, considering you couldn't spin dash in the original Sonic 1, although technically you don't have to spin dash in this mission. Just doing a regular roll into the enemies will count toward your total. Yes, rolls are completely different things from the spin dash. And no, I am not being pedantic. There are of course more than enough enemies for you to kill, in case you accidentally destroy some by jumping into them. The most surprising thing about this mission is just how long it is. You really do have to be spin dashing the whole time if you want to make sure you get that S rank. 35, Timed Battle, Kama Kama. I never realised how weird the names of the CD badniks were before I played these missions. This is another timed battle, and with there being 30 Kama Kamas in the level, it can be a bit anxiety inducing trying to find them all in time. I think the best approach is just to destroy them level by level and take a zigzag approach as you make your way up. It's pretty fun to methodically tackle each enemy one by one, even if you do have to rely on pinball physics, and those scythes can be a death sentence. 34, Twinkle Toes 2. For me, this is a massive improvement over the original Twinkle Toes. You aren't boxed in as much as you are in the original, meaning there's more freedom of movement and you're less likely to get crushed. And personally, I think this makes this easier than the first one too. There are some extra challenges in this one that were not present in the first. You are also asked to collect 15 rings on your way, but you don't exactly have to go out of your way to get these, and you're unlikely to lose them with how pathetic these B-bots are. The snake blocks can be a little difficult to navigate though, they don't move in the same constant patterns the barrels did, which means if you fall off a snake block, it might be a while before it's back in the position you need it to be for you to move on. And I personally think this unpredictability makes it a more engaging challenge than the first Twinkle Toes. Yeah, I'm just using this mission to take shots at the original Twinkle Toes. Also, I love how the bouncy floor is completely blocked off to the player. Like damn, if it wasn't I could finish this challenge so fast. 33. Timed Battle Tagger Tagger. This battle can be deceptively difficult. The water slowing you down means it can be hard to hit the Tagger Tagger before they run away from you. And Sonic CD is the one classic game that doesn't have the iconic drowning theme, which means I don't even notice when Sonic starts to run out of air in this game. It wasn't until I was gathering footage for this mission that I realised you could go through this pipe to find a bunch of extra Tagger Taggers to destroy. That is something I really appreciate about a lot of these missions. For as short as simple as a lot of them are, there are still multiple approaches you can take to beating them. Wait a second, why is this one called Timed Battle? Shouldn't it be called Tagger Tagger Swarm? It literally says they're swarming in the description, and this mission isn't even timed. Ring Challenge 100 still has the worst description, but this one receives the award for worst name. 32. Newton Swarm. Another Destroy the Badnik type mission. But the Newtons are one of the most interesting badniks that they could have picked. Thanks to them quickly disappearing after using their attacks, they can actually be some of the most difficult enemies to destroy. You really have to make sure you keep pace with them so you can hit them as soon as they spawn. And if you run too fast, or too slow, or get hit, you could miss your opportunity. 31. Ring Vacuum. The first of the missions built around Sonic's shield abilities. In this one, you have to use the Thunder Shield's double jump and ring magnet powers to pass. I actually had a bit of difficulty with this one at first, because I couldn't get the double jump to activate consistently. At first I thought it was a timing thing, but after trying to activate it at a bunch of different points it worked every time. After some experimenting, I realised that the double jump doesn't activate if you're holding up, which is strange. It meant I had a bit of difficulty jumping to the side because I'd be holding up and left. Although I was using the stick for this, probably would not have been an issue if I had just used the D-pad. Another funny thing about this mission is that sometimes you'll think you finished with enough rings, because you can see them all being drawn toward you, but if you hit the signpost before they finish being absorbed, you'll fail. 30. Extreme Knuckles Climbing Challenge. You know, this kind of feels more like a gliding challenge than a climbing one. Although I guess there are limited ways you can actually test Knuckles climbing. It's just, the actual climbing part of this challenge is pretty straightforward. It's the gliding part where you face actual obstacles. The only real test when climbing is stopping whenever this robot gets too close to the wall, but that only happens like once. Also, I always think it's a bit cheap when they want you to react to something that's not even on screen yet. In the final gliding part, you can't see those springs until after you've already started gliding. And what are you supposed to do then? I always just end up damage boosting my way through that last part. I realise that I am being excessively negative over a mission I ranked in A tier, but I still think it's a decent Knuckles mission. Better than that boring ass original climbing challenge, that's for sure. 29. Super Sonic Finish! I never bother going for the Chaos Emeralds when I play Sonic 2, so I am not used to controlling Super Sonic at all. And I just completely forgot how slippery this guy was. I had to spend my first few runs of this mission just trying to train myself to not overshoot the narrow platforms. It's pretty clever how this mission tries to trick you, putting all those enemies in your way to try and scare you, but you can actually just completely ignore them since you're invincible. And you don't actually have to engage with those spinny, screwy things either, because you can just jump over the walls with Super Sonic's extra jump height. I think it really is only those narrow platforms that pose any kind of threat. 28. Timed Battle Rhino Bots. I think the fun of the timed battle missions is less about actually fighting the enemy, and more about the scavenger hunt you have to go on just to find them. Searching all the nooks and crannies of the stage to find the rhinos, and then planning out the best route to destroy them all within the time limit. Spikes blocking your spin dash sure are annoying though. 27. Animal Rescue! Very cute idea for a mission. One of Sonic's driving motivators to defeat Eggman from the very beginning was to save his animal buddies, so it makes sense to build a mission around it. It is a test of patience level, where you have to wait for the enemies to pass before you can make your move. But you don't have to wait to the point of tedium. The level also kinda tricks you by placing the final capsule out of your way, so you have to search for it yourself. But you know you have to find 5 from the beginning, so it's not that likely that you'll just forget about it. 26. Animal Rescue! Not to be confused with the other mission, Animal Rescue, without the exclamation mark. I guess that rescue was less exciting. This mission is one of the few that have a more vertical layout, as opposed to the standard side-scrolling action. In it, You bounce on clouds to hit the animal capsules as they drop from above. It kind of loosely reminds me of Space Invaders. The pattern the platforms are laid out in is actually the same pattern the first 5 capsules will drop. The first cloud platform is in the middle, so that's where the first capsule drops. Then the next platforms are on the right, so the second capsule drops on there. And then the next 2 cloud platforms are on the left and the middles, so the third and fourth capsules drop from the left and middle as well. It's a pretty neat way to incentivize players to make their way to the top. Getting to the top is also beneficial because it means you can hit the capsules as soon as they come on screen, but there is also a risk because it's easier to miss them. I do think once you get to the top it can be a bit dull just bouncing around there waiting for the final 5 capsules to come. I think it would have been better if they had lowered the total number to like 8 or something so you didn't have to wait as long. 25. Duck and dive. Hey look, I literally only just noticed that rhymed. That's so funny. Anyway, 25. Duck and dive. Funny that this mission is placed right next to Thorny Challenge, considering this basically feels like the Tails equivalent of that. Duck and dive acts as a test of Tails' flying capabilities, as he uses them to weave between obstacles. But obviously Tails' flight is pretty OP, so this isn't that challenging. The most difficult parts are where they have hazards coming from the ceiling too, as you have to control how much height you're allowing yourself. 24. Tough Bluff. Another 0 ring challenge. This one's a bit longer than the others, but it also doesn't throw as much enemies and obstacles at you, so it balances things out. This mission is mainly built around the spinning platforms, which is a bit strange because that doesn't really relate to the 0 ring gimmick that much. Like, falling through these platforms is the same whether you have the rings or not. The only difference would be if you fell directly into the bee enemy, as the enemy would insta-kill you without rings, but you can usually travel up these platforms a safe distance away from the bee enemies. Speaking of the bee bandit though, it's the perfect enemy for this challenge, as you have to be extra careful to avoid its large swinging balls. A+ tier. The best of the best, or at least the best of A tier. There's still another tier above this. Spoilers if you don't know how tier lists work. 23. Extreme. Spin dash attack. I think it's cool that the extreme variation asks you to combine your spin dash with a jump, being a great way to teach players how to use that technique if they've never done it before. The most difficult part is obviously learning to time your jumps to line up with the rings, but once you learn to do that, it's a relatively straightforward mission. 22. Extreme. Gotta go fast. COG gotta go fast? This is what a good 5-star mission plays like. This mission sends a million fast moving obstacles at you, making it the ultimate test of reflexes, whilst also being short enough that you just want to keep trying it over and over until you succeed. It's just disappointing that this is locked behind the extreme paywall. Why couldn't they have gotten this right the first try? Also, before I leave, I should probably acknowledge the meme reference to the Sonic X theme song. Haha, very funny. You know, in Europe we had a completely different opening theme, so I didn't even understand where this meme came from at first. Which of these do you think had the better lyrics? 21. Aerial Attack. And Knuckles missions where you glide into enemies. Hopefully me ranking this so much higher than the extreme version shows that I do enjoy the concept of this mission, and doesn't make me look like a baby who just prefers this mission because it's easier. That being said, this mission is incredibly forgiving, allowing you to mess up but still pass with an S rank. The crab enemies are probably some of the more difficult enemies to glide into though. The hitbox on their bullets can activate before you really have time to react to it, and if you're already gliding toward them anyway, there's little you can do to avoid the bullet, since turning around isn't that fast. The bats are usually pretty easy to hit though, since they are lined up in a row for you. I also appreciate any mission that is set up in a non-linear manner. There is an inferred path you can follow, but you can also just travel back and forth across the level. Kind of reminds me of the treasure hunting levels from Sonic Adventure, you know, in a kind of esoteric way. 20. Mercy. CD. Finally, our last Mercy mission, and what is by far my favourite one. What makes this my favourite is that the enemies in this one will actually try and home in on you, meaning you have to put in more of an effort than usual to avoid them. And the ending sequence, where you have to keep running from a whole barrage of them, just looks cool. 19. Ring Vacuum 2. I'm not 100% sure why this mission is called Ring Vacuum 2, when you don't have to collect rings in it. It is a shield based mission like the first Ring Vacuum, but there are also 2 other shield missions which have different names, so I'm not sure why this one had to share a name with the first one. Anyway, I always thought it was cool that each of the shields gave Sonic a different ability, so I love that there's a mission that tests your knowledge of them. The first test is a bit of a troll since you can't see that the water's there until it's too late, and the part where you need the Thunder Shield is also a bit tricky. because it is in the middle, you could easily bounce onto it and then straight into the fire shield, so you would end up with that power up instead. And I also like that there's a final section where it actually is up to you to decide which shield you want to use, so the mission description isn't a complete lie. 18. Fireball Dash. Another shield mission, this time testing Sonic's fire dash ability. The wind chickens. The wind chickens are the perfect enemy for this mission. They're normally positioned so you can only hit them from the side, where they can easily blow you in the opposite direction. The butterflies can be a little problematic too, as you might accidentally destroy them with your jump instead of fire dashing. Plus you gotta factor in just finding them all and not running out of shields on top of that. Also, shout out to the Nick Strike, who discovered that if you jumped over this wall, you could actually play through the whole of Sonic 3 inside this mission, although I tried doing this in the Switch version and this happened. "17. Extreme Fire Dash." Is that the right name? Oh, I think it's called Extreme Fireball Dash. No, whatever. You know which. Why did I bother? You know. You know. You already know. Okay. Let's get on with this. The Extreme variant of Sonic's Fire Dash challenge, where you have to kill 7 bird bots and 7 frogs. This time set over Sonic's worst enemy, a shallow pool of water. Bum, bum. The first 6 birds you have to destroy aren't so bad, although they might launch themselves into you and you do have to go back and forth a few times to get them all. The last one though is absolutely sinister, being tucked away behind this narrow path and being positioned so you can easily jump into it, forcing you to restart the mission. The narrow path itself is pretty cool though. It's actually possible to spin dash over the water, so if you're skilled enough you can preserve your fire shield, but you are still provided with an extra one on the other side, in the likely event that you do lose it. The frogs are more difficult to destroy, because of how easily you can accidentally shoot yourself into one of their rotating arms, but there are more than 7 of them, so at least you don't have to get all of them. 16. Extreme Tough Gets Going. In the Tough Gets Going missions, you have to use a combination of Knuckles gliding, climbing and spin dashing to collect rings, avoid arrows and make it to the goal. And I obviously think that the Extreme variant is a good mission. I mean, I ranked it at number 16, didn't I? And there is a lot to like about it. It is challenging, and there are multiple paths to take. Weirdly, I think the lower path is actually the easier one. The Extreme version also adds the Astron enemy, which pairs well with the arrows, both having a timed element to them. But my problem with this mission is that I just find it slightly underwhelming when compared to its non-extreme version. I mean, you should already be used to avoiding arrows from the first one, so they're not as intimidating the second time round. You also don't have to worry about oxygen this time round since it's not set underwater. I just don't think it expands on the original concept in a super meaningful way. 15. Tails Doggy Paddle Challenge. One of Tails' lesser talked about abilities is his ability to swim, which, I mean, I guess it's not that impressive. Like, literally everyone can swim. Right? 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 Between avoiding obstacles and keeping track of Tails' oxygen, there's quite a few things to keep you engaged with this level, even if it's not the most challenging thing in the world. 14. Extreme Supersonic Finish. It's a supersonic mission again, except this time with actual threats. Wow! The giant blocks both act as obstacles to get in your way, and are capable of crushing you. And you have way less rings this time, so it's actually possible to run out. I mean, I guess it was possible to run out in the original, if you like really, really sucked. There's also this cool upper path that's kind of hidden away, but I think it is necessary to get the S rank. 13. Tails Balloon Burst. Tails is known for his flight, so it's a natural idea to give him a mission where he hits aerial targets. You start at the bottom of the stage and the balloons propel you upwards when you hit them, helping you to reach the higher balloons quicker. But this also comes with its own risk, because if you overshoot the balloons, it's more time consuming to lower yourself back down to them, and there are just enough hazards to keep you on your toes. Also, there's just something inherently satisfying about popping balloons. Maybe that's why none of the kids at school invited me to their birthday parties. Oh. 12. Eggman Fancy Footwork. I already believed that the Eggman fight in Starlight Zone is one of the most cleverly designed in the game. You've been shown how the seesaw works throughout the level, so you already know how to use them by the time you get to Eggman. And on top of that, you're given multiple methods to hit Eggman, either catapulting Sonic into him, or using his own ammo against him. So taking what is already a great boss fight and making a harder version of it is a great idea for a mission, and the difficulty is increased in a pretty natural way too. Just removing the floor, so you have to be using the seesaws at all times. And doing it ringless is the cherry on top. My one criticism is, say it with me now, the timer doesn't stop as soon as you defeat Eggman! Wow! Okay, we're done. No more timer shit. Oh god, I said shit. No I didn't. I'll cut this out. Maybe. I'll think about it. 11. Extreme. Take to the air. COG take to the air? This is how you make a Tails flying mission interesting. Just add some obstacles for him to avoid. It's still not the trickiest mission if you're careful. It's probably easiest to stay low and then fly upwards so you can destroy the enemies from below. Also, you're given a full minute for the S rank, so you can mess up a bit and still make it. Overall, I do enjoy the mission, but this is another one where I'm bitter that it wasn't in the base game. 10. Speedy Swim. A mirror mode mission where you have to run away from the Hydro Kitty wall backwards. Just getting to the end by itself isn't so bad, but wow does this mission rev up in difficulty if you try to go for the rings. Most of them are placed just out of your way, making them ever so slightly inconvenient to get, costing you precious seconds to collect them as the walls close in on you. It has Indiana Jones grabbing his hat energy, if you know what I mean. The most difficult part is when you need to spin dash to break the blocks blocking you, but then the wall starts pushing you forward before you can, so you just go into a pathetic little whirl instead and get crushed. It's definitely another one of those challenges where you just want to keep trying again and again until you get it just right. 9. Bodyguard. An escort mission where Sonic protects his best buddy Tails from harm. Oh, what a cute idea for a mission. Too bad the Tails AI is kind of an idiot. It can actually get stuck at the beginning of the level, so you can just go through the rest without having to worry about protecting him. But when it works, it's a pretty good time. Enemies can spring from the ceiling, so you have to be extra careful and not forget to kill them. And I like that Tails can defend himself too, so he's not completely useless, unlike in Sonic Forces, am I right? Am I right? Am I right? Okay, that's enough backing on modding Sonic. We had to reach the quota for the video, sorry guys. Alright, 8. Extreme. Duck and dive. Turns out the way to add challenge to a Tails mission is just to take away the rings. Who knew? This is one of the more slower paced missions, thanks to Tails' flight being kind of slow and having to watch out for the traps. I do appreciate that it's not a waiting around kind of mission though. You can keep moving pretty consistently throughout. Between having to watch out for enemies and keeping Tails' flight in check, this makes for quite an engaging mission. 7. Timely Technique. Since Sonic CD is a game about time travel, it's only appropriate that they came up with some unique time-based missions, even if it is one that wasn't a mechanic in the original game. In Timely Technique, you have to kill an enemy every 10 seconds. With how many of them there are, the time cap is never that much of a threat. Still, I appreciate that killing multiple enemies in a row doesn't stack time. You're always locked at 10 seconds max, which is great because if time did stack, this mission would be way too lenient. And hey, how often do you get to hear the Sonic CD hurry up music? Hey wait, why didn't they just use this as a drowning theme? 6. Critical Cargo. I've always loved this sequence of running away from Eggman's airship as it drops bombs on you. It's very cinematic. But it was always pretty easy to outrun the missiles. Well, this mission adds a new twist by forcing you to not outrun the missiles. The airship alternates between dropping Rhinobots, PT Piranhas, and missiles, and you have to destroy 10 of the robots while dodging the missiles. Now, you'd think the easiest method would be to just keep rolling the whole time. This way you can roll into the badniks as they're dropping, while also being far enough back that the missiles don't hit you. But the piranha plants also fire their own bombs that will hit you if you just do that. So you gotta make sure you're on the ball and jump when necessary. The conditions to get an S rank are pretty harsh too. The airship only drops 11 badniks for you to destroy, So if you miss more than one, you have to wait for the next airship to come, and then you have to go through a whole extra air raid just to make up for it. The airships take about 40 seconds each to pass, so that means you might get the one extra guy you need straight away, and then you just have to keep running for 40 seconds until the ship leaves. And honestly, at that point you may as well just restart the mission instead of waiting that long. 5. Extreme Balloon Burst. Tails' second balloon burst mission, except this time, it's not all fun and games. Well, I mean, it's still a fun game, but you know what I mean. So there are some balloons that, when popped, will send you straight into the fire, which at first I thought was pretty cheap since it was sending me into something that I couldn't see, but then I realised it was because I was coming at the balloon from below. But if you come at it from the side or above, you can actually see the fire above it. So I appreciate that the level does actually forewarn you about its obstacles, but it's on you to approach it from the right angle. There are also a lot of little decisions that you have to make on the fly as you take on the level. When should you rest and when should you keep going? Will the extra momentum you get from popping the balloon be enough to reach the next one? But the thing I love most about the mission is that it's getting the player to do something that they could never really do in a regular level. There was never a level that featured an extended Tails flying sequence, so it's cool that they added one in. Also, I do appreciate that you don't have to physically hit the goalpost to pass the level. That would be super irritating. 4. Zero Ring Challenge Part 2. A really great innovation on the Zero Ring Challenge concept. It's much more exhilarating than the original, as there's more pressure to finish fast, with trickier enemies to dodge, really testing your reflexes. It's also a very short mission, making it addictive to retry as you see how close you got to finishing. This is one mission where the drop dash in particular really helps you out. There are a few things you might not have enough time to react to your first time through, but the short length also means it's not that taxing to retry, and you'll be able to prepare yourself easier as you memorise the level. I think the spring at the end is the only part that feels outright unfair. You have no idea what it's going to launch you into, and unlike the earlier parts of the stage, you can't instantly roll into a ball to protect yourself. And finally, we've reached S tier. The true best of the best. The true golden good boys. If you've never seen a tier list before and don't know why S is better than A, it's because S stands for Sonic. 3. Extreme Tails Doggy Paddle Challenge. My favourite Tails mission combines everything I loved about all of his previous missions. It's built around his flying, or swimming I guess. You have obstacles both above and below you, so you really have to keep tight control of Tails' flight. And you can also take advantage of spin dashing and damage boosting at the right points to help you get that S rank. Throw in the extra challenges that come with it being set in water, the lack of oxygen and Tails not being able to defend himself while swimming, and you've got a great, well-rounded mission. Man, my Tails bias really came through with this list. 6 of his 8 missions ended up in my top 15. 2. Tough Get Going. What a great, multifaceted mission. There are just so many layers to it. You have to collect rings, watch your air supply, utilise Knuckles climbing and gliding, and have the right timing, knowing when to hold back or duck to avoid the arrows. I also love that this is a Knuckles mission that still utilises his unique abilities, climbing and gliding, but it's not solely about them, bringing in other elements to mix it up too. I used to have a problem with the arrows at the end of this level. I thought it was too finicky to activate them without getting hit, but after practice it really wasn't as bad as I thought, which upgraded this to the perfect mission. Number 1. The one ring to rule them all. It's probably obvious by now that I have a soft spot for missions designed around unique character abilities, be it Knuckles' gliding, Tails' flight, or Sonic's shield powers. But my favourite mission isn't one that utilises a mechanic unique to a character, but instead a mission that utilises a mechanic unique to the Sonic series in general. That being recollecting your rings after getting hit. In the One Ring, you are given one ring, and you have to finish with it in your possession. You don't automatically lose when you get hit though. If you did, they may as well just make this another ringless challenge. You get the chance to collect your ring again if you lose it, and only fail the mission if you take too long to retrieve it. Basically it's how Baby Mario works in Yoshi's Island. What's cool about this is that you can actually use getting hit to your advantage. Take the badniks that block your path for example. You could just wait around for the robots to shoot their shot, so you could get by without losing a ring, but it's way faster to get hit once, recollect your rings, and then run by the robots while you're invincible. In fact, I think you basically have to do this if you want to guarantee the S rank. Maybe I'm overhyping this mission by putting it at number 1, but I just love that they took one of Sonic's oldest staple mechanics and used it to craft a mission that wouldn't really work in any other game. Also, I've never really cared about Lord of the Rings, but I do find it funny that they used this mission as an opportunity to reference it. Conclusion! So if you couldn't tell by the sheer number of missions I put in A tier, I think a lot of them are pretty great, putting a fresh new spin on decades old gameplay. Wait, I already said that in my intro. Oh, well, that was like 50 minutes ago, no one's going to remember that. My main critique is that a lot of them were just very easy, and between the timed battles, swarmed missions, and the missions where you have to defeat enemies using a specific attack, there is just an excessive amount of destroy the enemies missions. I also think it would have been way past cool if they showed you what your best time for a mission was. That way, once you get an S rank, you'd have a reason to keep playing to beat your best time. And for the missions where keeping track of your best time wouldn't make sense, maybe show players their highest ring count or something. Before I leave, I thought it'd be fun to look at which of the 4 games had the best set of missions overall. To show this, I made a chart of how many missions from each game were placed in each tier, and I also calculated the average ranking for each of the game's set of missions. The lower the average meaning the better the game performed overall. As you can see, CD performed the worst. It has the highest average of 41.2, was the only game to have 2 missions ranked in D tier, and none of its missions made it to S tier. CD's poor performance is largely due to me just not caring for a lot of the unique gimmicks CD has to offer, either finding them annoying, like the time travel mechanic, or uninteresting, not doing much to distinguish itself from regular gameplay, like in the case of Fast Foes and Small Stuff. Also, it didn't help that I did not think highly of its 2 5-star missions, and it had 1 less extreme mission than the other games. Sonic 1 is next with an average of 36.9. It has the largest range of scores, getting 1 mission in D tier and 1 mission in S tier. Whilst the later games could use gimmicks specific to their own game to craft missions around, Sonic 1 didn't really have that luxury. Almost everything present in Sonic 1 is also in the later games, so the Sonic 1 missions rely more on playing around with series staple mechanics. In some cases it uses or subverts them excellently, like in the 1 Ring, 0 Ring Challenge 2, or Extreme Spin Dash Attack. And in other cases, the ideas they came up with just weren't that compelling or weren't utilised that well, like in A Swinging Good Time or Mercy, which is why Sonic 1 ends up with such a large variance in scores. In second is Sonic 2, with an average of 33.6 recurring. If you just looked at the chart by itself, you might think that Sonic 2 is the best performing game, since it got 2 of its missions in S tier. But if you look at the breakdown of all the placements, you can see that the Sonic 2 missions really stagnated toward the middle, with 7 of them ending up in the 40s range. The highlight of the Sonic 2 missions are the ones that utilise unique character abilities, with the Tails, Knuckles and Supersonic missions being some of the best. But most of the other Sonic 2 missions don't go much beyond just being decent, just scraping the absolute lowest end of A tier. And finally, that means my beloved widescreen Sonic 3 has the best set of missions, with an average of 32.4, as well as the shortest range of scores out of all the games. Like Sonic 2, Sonic 3 is really helped out by its unique character ability missions, this time being able to add Sonic's elemental shields to the mix as well. These don't all perform quite as hell as Sonic 2's did, but there's also more of them, and the worst any of them do is still only B tier. I think consistency is the key to the Sonic 3 mission's success. It might not have reached the dazzling heights of S tier, but it never sunk that low either. Its lowest ranked mission is still higher than all of the other game's lowest ranked missions. And that's my personal tier list for Sonic Origins Mission Mode! This is the point where I would normally ask how you would have ranked the missions, and what your personal favourite and least favourites are. But honestly, I don't really give a damn. Bye! No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Please comment your entire ranking below. I really need the engagement. Like, really bad.